Admonition the sixth. Be available for the adventure. Now, before we act on that impulse, before we drive down that drive, before we bring the car to a halt as we emerge into sunlight from the overhanging silver birch and alder, and most definitely before either myself or Sadie utter the words, "Oh dear God," or similar, because I don't really remember exactly what we did say, other than it was an exclamation of sorts. I should explain why we were available to this opportunity, why we could afford to be a little curious, a little cavalier with our future. For as my paternal grandmother Marjorie would say, make no mistake, this represented an opportunity, and for opportunities we were most definitely available. Over the preceding 4 years or so, and including our first trip to Arran 2 weeks after we met that fateful evening in Notting Hill, it became more and more apparent that our focus was shifting northward and to the rural. Oh yes, of course, we discussed the home counties, and aside from the irritating mental capitalisation, the eruption of suburbia in inappropriate bucolic dells, and the advance of tar macadam, the deciding factor was the thought that if we moved to Wilts, Oxon, or the Glossies, we'd ever be drawn back down the irresistible well into the singularity that is the capital. For us, the event horizon was the Scottish border. Beyond that limit, both physical and spiritual, we thought we might make a complete break with life as it was. This is not to say life as it was not good in London. By that time we lived in a lavender-coloured 3-bed maisonette off Hammersmith Grove, breakfasted on Vivian's giant croissant, and dined each night on fine provender won from Shepherd's Bush Market. The Goldhawk station rattled and groaned behind us, and in front a series of interestingly uninhibited neighbours provided us with a varied and quite visually arresting street life, notwithstanding heavy-booted, overexcited jigs on doorsteps from yours truly, of which more later. I spent my days designing websites, branding companies, and getting involved in efforts to improve life in the bush with the inimitable Chris Noonan, even getting so far as being interviewed at the Bush Roundabout by Radio 4's Eddie Mair, who'd concocted some deeply questionable story about a rivalry between our community and that in Notting Hill. As for Sadie, well, she was the epitome of the successful jobbing actor, carving out a niche on screen, on stage, and in the city. And while not engaged in the career she loved, she provided office support for a West London chain of estate agents, utilising her formidable interpersonal and organisational skills to coordinate a roster of her fellow actors to work in branches across the capital. In other words, our lives as they were not entirely bound by the 9-to-5 world or location, or indeed one particular activity. We were pursuing what were at the time termed portfolio careers, with only our 2 Bassets, Nancy, elderly and rescued, and Nellie, youthful and ours from puppyhood, providing us with anything like a daily routine. We were able, therefore, to drop everything and drive north when need or desire drove us, keeping up with work and castings via email and phone from Sadie's mums. Early one morning in January 2002, we returned to the Goldhawk Road from a longer than usual visit to the island for Christmas and a 3-day hogmanay, to find a workaday world in full swing, the stalls being set up for the market, the paper bundles on the corner shop doorsteps, the commuters beginning their multitudinous journeys into town. My heart sank, and as it did I sighed, almost at the same time as Sadie herself sighed, and Sadie, unlike me, did not sigh at every opportunity. I was and am still renowned for my sighs, as I enter rooms, as I leave rooms, as I sit, as I stand. Sighing is part of my unconscious engagement with the world, and mostly means not a great deal. For Sadie to sigh, well, that means something. Ennui, dissatisfaction, sadness. Sadie propped her head in her hand and wound the window back up. The reality of dank, wet pavement, of the jarring urban environment and the proximity of millions of others had become suddenly, overwhelmingly claustrophobic. "Well, we're back then," I said. "It'll be okay, once we're in the house." "I know." I noted the resignation in my beloved's voice. I'll get some croissant for breakfast and a couple of coffees from 2 doors down. That'd be nice. And maybe tonight we could go out to the Raj. Okay. Rather stay in? Maybe. We were sitting in a short queue of traffic while a refuse lorry waited to turn onto the Grove. Even a cheery Tarrant playing something stupid didn't lift the mood. It's not that I don't like the bush and Hammersmith and life here, it's just that if we moved to Scotland, we'd have that environment, the hills, the people, the family, and our kids could have a rural childhood. And this? Not this. No matter the opportunities and variety and, well, all that good urban stuff, we'll always be able to visit. We have friends to stay with, I suppose. Michelle, Debs, Adam, Kingley. It started to rain, lightly, a soft wash settling onto the bonnet and windscreen of the car. The wipers juddered across the glass, setting my teeth on edge. But what about Vivian's? How would I manage without my daily croissant? There are some sacrifices you have to be willing to make, Charlie. A wry smile. Do you think Dan would bring me a consignment once in a while? Probably. I sighed. Sadie relented. Okay, certainly. A quick glance at me, another smile. I changed down a gear as we approached the improbable but essential Chinese takeaway cum patisserie, ready to turn right. My eyes lingered on Vivian's momentarily. Well, in that case, let's put the house on the market. I depressed the indicator as we waited to turn. We murmured the line with Nicole, and then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like, I love you. The dogs would love it. I glanced in the mirror. They were still fast asleep on the back seat, Nellie's head pillowed on Nancy's flank, her jollops gently lifting as she snored. That they would. When our terraced maisonette came into view, with its lavender paint and white concrete wall, its broad steps and entirely paved front garden, it did make us pause in our resolution. After all, we'd worked hard on it, and despite the drizzle, it still looked delicious, just as we'd designed it to. But from that return, I realised, we were merely visiting. We'd moved.